I have a secret to tell you. I have to admit something that perhaps I wasn't entirely honest about. The real reason why I started making the Warcraft RPG videos, the videos about the old RPGs from the early 2000s, the real reasons why I started doing those was because I wanted to return to something I did on my old blog from, I see now the post was from 2014, something I did in my old blog over 10 years ago, or really 11 years ago, because this was June 2014. And I was doing that even earlier than this, because these posts were also transplanted from Scrolls of Lore forum, which anyone remembers that, bonus points to you. But the real reason I started making those videos because I wanted to start to introduce you to the setup, to the idea of what was there, and to the idea of the dreaded Appendix III of the Manual of Monsters, the appendix that was trying to adapt the various monsters from D&D into the Warcraft universe and trying to find a way to fit them into the Warcraft universe. And for the most part, it hasn't done it in a very stellar way. Like half the entries there were explained as Necromancer did it, which, like, there are much more creative ways you could do that. And at some point, over 10 to 15 years ago, somewhere in that time space, I decided that I could do it myself. I could take my own hand at adapting some famous, some recognizable D&D elements into the Warcraft universe. And I have actually adapted quite a few D&D elements into my version of the Warcraft universe. And today I wanted to talk about one of the things that comes up the most often in the RP that we are doing in our server, and that is something that is also now on the other side, on the D&D side, is also very popular now because of a certain video game, Baldur's Gate 3. And that is one of the things that I adapted from D&D in the Warcraft universe for my game was the Githyanki, and Githzerai, of course, which nobody ever remembers Githzerai, because they're the less bad Gith. But I have written this post in 2014, and I wanted to return to that because I'm still thinking about it. We are still talking about it in our game, and I do like how it came out and what has come of it. So let's introduce you to the corporeals. Not all inhabitants of Karesh turned into ethereals when the ritual that transformed them was completed. Many died from the sudden influx of arcane energies and catastrophes caused by the land tearing itself apart. And then some of the Kareshi neither died nor turned into energy beings. Some of them built up a natural resistance to the arcane energy and withstood the wasting effects of the arcane wind for a time. When even they could not survive unchanged, their bodies were changed and warped into barely resembling their former selves. While they kept their general shape, their faces no longer looked recognizable, and even slightest physical effort tired them greatly. Then Karesh started breaking apart, and the survivors had to escape. All survivors of Karesh's catastrophical demise were thoroughly distressed by the changes that occurred to them. While most ethereals embraced their change and tried to adapt to a life of an energy cloud, the ones who still had a dysfunctional body were unhappy. Soon they banded together and used the unnatural properties of the twisting nether to hone their bodies and train themselves, preparing to the new conditions. A leader appeared among them, called the Gish, who held a grudge against the ethereals for their transformations. Suspecting them to be culprits of calling the void to Karesh as well, he encouraged many of the corporeals to shun their now ethereal brethren. Nexus Prince Haramad tried to negotiate with this newly formed faction and race, and to better facilitate those negotiations, he decided the ethereals must appear less inhuman. His consortium developed a special magical bandage which wraps around an ethereal and binds it inside, giving it an illusion of a humanoid form. In this new shape, Haramad and his messengers appeared to Gish and tried to talk their differences out. Although Haramad was ready for many concessions, Gish kept pushing further and further until then Lieutenant Zovax lashed out in anger and torn apart Gish's body with a single spell. Furious at their leader's death and disgusted by the way of his demise, the Corporeals attacked the ethereal mission, killing almost all of them. Only Haramad and Zovax escaped. Soon Zovax was expelled from the consortium for his crime, but Salhadar's Ethereum gladly admitted him, facilitating further splintering of Kareshi society. While the Ethereum and Consortium started fighting each other over the disagreements, the Corporeals evacuated to further reaches of the Twisting Nether. There they looked for dead husks of slain titans and fragments of other worlds destroyed by the Burning Legion, settling on those small homes and establishing their monasteries. Corporeals decided to start a monastic lifestyle, because only the rigid discipline and martial aptitude of a monk could train their new bodies to remain functional. Due to the way they parted, Corporeals hate the Ethereals and are taught that hate from the earliest childhood. Young Corporeals are taught Ethereals a little better than the demons and the void, and so is anyone who allies with them. They do not negotiate with outsiders. They kill on sight or flee anyone who isn't one of them. I have to say here that this post, because this post is so old, it's much older than most of the things that we know about Karesh now, and especially it's older than the reveals about Karesh from the patch in the War Within. And it doesn't gel very well with like, some of the revelations about the Reshi wraps and how they were made originally, and that the Ravel, which the Locust Walker and Benari were a part of, how they were the very people who caused the destruction of Karesh. Although that part, it can work with that backstory I have given here, because it doesn't explicitly say that the Corporeals are wrong to blame the Ethereals. In fact, it proves that the Corporeals were right to blame the Ethereals. But still, it's not the turn exactly as as I expected over 11 years ago. And so it could still be adapted with like some minor changes to the small elements of the story, but the Corporeals do come up a lot in our games as this another race attached to Karesh that is still very relevant, and there's even more races, and we expanded more upon the Ethereals and added more types of Ethereals, like which differ by the form they take, by the kind of chassis, kind of the kind of form they use to bind their form inside. Like there are Storm Children, the form that I called Storm Children after a very old world building project of mine. The form that uses a more metallic chassis, because it's used by the more warrior inclined Ethereals, who need this metallic chassis because the armor clings to that chassis better than to any like wrappings the Ethereals are using, the other Ethereals are using. And of course, we had also independently, before this new patch, we had also made brokers to be Ethereals. And in our version, brokers are essentially ethereal neophytes. They are new people who weren't originally the Zarahim of Karesh. The Zarahim is what we called it in our game. The brokers are people of different races who were subjected to the same transformation, were willingly subjected to the same transformation to be made these immortal energy beings. And that's essentially what the brokers are in our version. And of course there are more models of ethereals running around Karesh, like these smaller, these almost childlike looking ethereals who are not children. They are in fact, they are just regular ethereals, because there are no children on Karesh. Regular ethereals who were bound into these smaller forms to be, for example, better thieves. And in our version, of course, this whole event, all of this happened around 1,000 years ago instead of like over 100,000 years ago as it had in canon, because sci-fi writers and fantasy writers have no sense of scale, and they give us these ridiculously huge numbers, when in fact, like, the whole of real life human civilization, everything we know from history, happened in the span of like 5,000 years. And in Warcraft we're dealing with time spans of 25,000, 100,000 now. 100,000 years ago, if I recall correctly, that is before the Toba catastrophe, which almost wiped out the human race. So imagine how different the world and the human race was before that. How many different, like, ethnicities, types of humankind were wiped out in that event. This is how huge a time span we are talking about. And so instead we made it to be 1,000 years ago. I have also written in this post a few notable individuals, a few biographies. Gish, our version of Mother Gith, who is male in this version. Gish was once a simple laborer on Karesh. When the transfiguration wasted his body and turned him into a weak husk of his former self, he sought spiritual treatment. He meditated for a long time and practiced simple martial arts, thus reaching a conclusion that the ethereals are to blame for everything that happened to Karesh. After preaching to the corporeals and gathering a group of followers, he intentionally aggravated the ethereal messengers until he died as a martyr. Some believe the spirit of Gish lives on in all corporeal monks who follow his teachings. Yadra is the current leader of corporeals. Residing in a monastery located on a piece of rock that is rumored to have once been part of Karesh's northern continent, she leads and organizes the raids against the Void, the Burning Legion, and the Ethereals. Like most priors before her, Yadra believes ethereals are evil creatures, warped by the transformation, and must all be destroyed if Karesh is to live again. Also, a school of thought among the corporeals believes that nothing can restore Karesh, and whatever remains of it must be left to rot. Elhandar leads that school and teaches that Karesh lives on in them. He also attempts to open the corporeal society, at least slightly, but due to severe resistance from Yadra and her supporters, he is forced to fight against the outsiders, albeit he is looking for a way out. And not all corporeals are cut out for the rigorous training they receive from early childhood. Some of them, like Revanjar, grow up with a severe animosity to their discipline, which seeps into their very being and blackens their hearts. Most of those are found out quickly enough and terminated before they can become a threat, but Revanjar was strong enough to not only hide his fell taint, but also to finish his hated training to become a master of fighting arts. Revanjar departed, creating his own fell-tainted school, with a single objective: to destroy Yadra's people who took away his childhood. As something that I didn't really mention in this post was an element that did come up in our old RP on Twitter when we were doing Twitter RP before, Twitter got taken over by actual legit real life fascists, and called X. Before that happened, we were still role-playing quite a lot on Twitter, and one of the key elements that we were doing was a group of corporeal pirates, which I need to find on my blog, so I'll be with you in a moment. Yeah, I can't find any blog posts about that right now. Did I not write it down at the time? But that would be very unfortunate. But yeah, there was a whole storyline we did with another planet that the Crashers were exploring, a planet called Skalactis, and we met a group of corporeal pirates there. People who are essentially like a version of the Gith pirates from the Spelljammer setting, who are corporeals who left the whole conflict between ethereals and corporeals behind and left to explore and raid the universe. And maybe I'll even show the whole map we made for Skalactis back then. I'd have to probably change a few things now if I was ever returning to that, but still you can see the old map. Probably can see the old map I made all the way back then. And we encountered these Gith pirates there. Not Gith pirates, of course, the corporeal pirates. So that storyline seems to be sadly mostly gone. But it lives on in our hearts, Anyway, this is it for my post about my old post about the corporeals and for the whole video about them. And if you would like to see more famous creatures and monsters and races from any D&D worlds adapted into the Warcraft universe, which I had done a few, and I may do new ones now. If you'd like to see more of that, don't forget to like and subscribe, and do all the YouTube stuff, and also maybe check out the Ko-fi page in the video description below. And I am considering making a Patreon that would be sharing all the VTT battle maps I have made for our game. I don't make my own battle maps for every fight, but I have made quite a collection of maps that use a lot of the Warcraft textures and Warcraft models of like buildings and trees and stuff to make a battle map that looks like it was taken out of World of Warcraft, but it's not. It's an original map that I had made. So I am considering opening up a Patreon for that, but I don't know just how exactly would Patreon treat it with their rules. If you know about that, you can also leave a comment below. And if you would like to see more about that Patreon page, about those battle maps, all the tokens I have made from the WoW models, if you would like to see more of that, let me know in the comments below. And if I see the support, even if I don't see the support, I will probably try to organize that. But if I see the support, I will definitely be very quick on that, because I am always a very much of a people pleaser, and I want to make people happy. So if you would be happy by me seeing those maps and those tokens I made from all the WoW creatures and races, then let me know. And I hope to see you next time.